One of the most fun things about playing jazz standards is that you can reharmonize them. You can get them to sound more personal and more fresh. And it's also good not to just sound like everybody else. In this video, I'm going to go over 5 sets of chords for Autumn Leaves, and it's level by level getting more and more far out and exotic. And you can use these concepts and these techniques to make your own arrangements so you never sound predictable again. My name is Jens Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. These are the basic changes of the song, and while we're going to talk about how to change them and how to make reharmonizations, then I think it is worth pointing out that actually this is a really strong, really beautiful chord progression. Another thing that you want to keep in mind with all these different reharmonizations that I'm going to go over is that they only really work if people already know what the original sounds like, because otherwise then the impact of them is not going to be as surprising. So sometimes when you're working with reharmonizations, it makes a lot of sense to start with the original changes and then sort of build the listener's expectation of what this sounds like, and then use a later repeat to introduce some new sounds and in that way keep it interesting. Even though ironically I'm actually using the first A for the entire video. Let's start by adding some different secondary dominants and a surprise ending. This first reharmonization is staying pretty close to the original. I'm just adding a few secondary dominants and actually also tritone substitutions to move things along, add a little bit of tension that I also almost immediately resolve. So we have the C minor 7, and then in the second half of that bar I have the G flat 7, and then that continues to F7 to B flat. Then I'm moving with an extra E7 to E flat major 7. And then the A half diminished D7 is turned into 2 chromatic 2/5s. And this is a very common way to reharmonize minor 2/5s. That's something that you kind of want to have in your toolbox as something that just can happen almost at random and also sometimes while playing. So what I'm doing is that instead of playing the A half diminished, I'm playing B flat minor, E flat 7, and then going down to an A minor to D7. And then of course the last chord is quite a surprise, but that's because the song would usually continue on a C minor 7. So before we go there, you would often have a G7, and the tritone of that is D flat 7. And it just so happens that with the B flat in the melody, you can actually play that D flat 7 all the time instead of the G minor. And in that way creates of a suspension and just keep, again, it's just to keep things moving really. Turning the entire A part into a long row of chromatic 2/5s is probably only possible because this melody is actually pretty repetitive. It's the same motif that's moving all the time, so it does fit. And when it fits, then it sounds really good, I think. You can find a recording of Keith Jarrett doing this with his trio, also on Autumn Leaves. And it is a nice sound just because it keeps on moving, the constant moving. The 2/5s never really stand still, so they just keep on pushing forward. Another thing that I'm doing is also that I'm playing an A minor chord instead of the A half diminished. And this way of using sort of a major 2 chord instead of a minor 2 chord in a minor cadence is actually something that you can use both in your reharmonizations of themes, but also just throw in a solo as a way of playing a different kind of 2 chord in a minor cadence. Of course, Autumn Leaves is just a song. It's a basic tonal piece of music. It's not a modal composition. But that doesn't mean that you can't treat it as if it's modal. And if you listen to the second Miles Davis quintet and how they interpret standards, then actually that's what they're doing. They're slowing down the harmonic rhythm quite a bit, but they're also really just treating each chord as just a sound, not really as part of a progression in that way. That's of course something you can do with Autumn Leaves as well. So here I'm adding just different sounds to the different chords. I'm not really thinking about how the harmony is moving. So the first chord is usually a C minor 7, and then I'm turning it into this Phrygian chord, which is a C7 sus4 flat 9. From here I move to an F7 with a sharp 5 or a flat 13, and that's simply just because we have the 9th in the melody, so I can't add a flat 9 or a flat 13. After that I play a B flat major 7, but now it's a B flat major 7 sharp 5, so that's a D major triad with a B flat in the bass. And then I'm playing an E flat major 7 with a sharp 11. The last cadence to the G minor is also changed because I'm playing, instead of playing an A half diminished, I'm playing an A minor major, moving to D7, and then also playing a G minor major, just to have a little bit more of a sound, even though that's still just the tonic sound that you would have there. Instead of just changing the color of the chords, you can of course also change the progression with some and change the color of the chord with other chords, and in that way create a completely different sound. That's kind of what I'm doing here. The first chord I'm playing now is actually a B major 7. And you could look at that as being sort of a C half diminished, where I'm suspending the root with a B. That's one way that will work, but it works really well in this progression because instead of going directly to F7, I first go to C minor and then to F7. Then I go to a B flat major 7, but now it's with a sharp 11. And from here I can go to an E flat 7. And from the E flat 7, this is really just there. It fits with the melody, but it's also just there to take us to an A flat major 7. And the A flat major 7 is of course kind of the same thing as what I did with the B major 7 in the beginning. So it's just kind of like an A half diminished, but then I'm suspending the bass note like this. And then from here, A minor to D7. And then the G minor sound that I'm using here is also a little bit different because I want to have a C sharp in there just to get sort of a different sound. Essentially, this is just about getting a different, more spicy, exotic sound. So first this chord, and then this G minor major, which is essentially a D major 7 sharp 5 with a G in the bass. I think it is possible to explain or analyze these chords in terms of what they are related to the key, but maybe that's not really the point here, because really this is more about just exploring, finding sounds, changing the chords and seeing what happens, and then end up with something that you like the sound of. In a way that's both fun and beautiful about playing around with harmony, because if you allow yourself to be free and experiment, then you're gonna find some really nice things. And you don't always have to have an explanation. If it sounds good, then it is good. If you want to dig deeper into what is actually possible with tonal harmony, then check out this video where I'm going over a lot of different examples of what you can do with a basic cadence, a basic 2/5, and using all sorts of different substitutions and different sounds from tonal harmony.